who you physically present is incorrect and doesn't actually match what physically is here. So a lot of people with dysmorphia, they see themselves as fat even if they're thin. Or they see themselves as got a receding hairline even if their hairline is perfectly normal. Or thinning hair when their hair is really thick. Or, insert negative self-perception for correct or accurate self-perception. And I think it's really important that we take a minute to really recognize that. And maybe if that's something that you have experienced, this idea of I see myself, but it's not really matching what everybody tells me about myself. And I know from personal experience with dysmorphia, the only cure for it is to really work on your self-care. It's to really push down the feelings of, I can't be a selfish bitch, right? Like I have to help other people. That's where I get my worth. You have to push those feelings down and make self-care the priority. And that is the only way to correct imposter syndrome or to correct dysmorphia or to get you more in balance. If we're talking about, a scale of 0 to 10. 0 being you think you're an absolute piece of garbage, you don't deserve the air you breathe. And 10 is like you're an egomaniac and the whole world revolves around you and everybody must do to please you, right? And you're trying to find that 5, that middle ground where you're somewhere in between. The only way to get from 0 closer to 5 is to constantly reinforce that you will take care of yourself first. Because our brains are programmed, they're literally wired to look for what's wrong. Our brains, our prehistoric brains have not evolved all that much. And with the oversaturation of stimulation from social media and from the world and the internet and the loud and the go, go, go and the pace, we're not really evolving out of that mentality. We have fucked up our flight or flight mechanism to make it seem like if somebody says something bad about me or hurts my feelings, I'm actually the same chemical reaction as running from a dinosaur for my life is happening. And it's so difficult to utilize your energy to really reverse that or stop that from happening. So we have to recognize that there is a bit of work involved in flipping that script, in making the intention to take care of ourselves first versus helping everybody else and then trying to derive our self-worth from this list of accomplishments, right? That everybody else is like, this is how we define success. And the best way to do that, the best way to switch that thinking and to really dissolve that imposter syndrome, those feelings of inadequacy, is to see yourself through your best qualities. So if you are stuck on getting the outside validation, at least go with it, okay? So if somebody says to you, man, you are funny, right? And in your mind, you're like, oh my God, I'm such a nerd and I had to practice what I was saying. Or they wouldn't, if they really knew how awkward I really was, they wouldn't say that. I challenge you that if you deal with those kinds of thoughts and feelings on a consistent basis and it's preventing you from your self-care, to start looking at yourself from the lens of, I'm funny. I'm a funny motherfucker. I got jokes for days. Y'all, I can make you laugh. Right? You've got to start owning that. And if it has to first come from outside, fine. Grab onto that, work that as much as you can until you can generate it from within. Because on the opposite scale of this imposter syndrome is standing in your power. It's owning who you are. It's celebrating those wacky characteristics about yourself. Because if you let go of this, oh, I'm just being objective, as an excuse of beating yourself up, you're gonna start to see yourself in a much stronger light. And then once that flashlight gets sort of shown on the darkness, you start to see yourself in a whole new way. You start to see your actions and your thoughts and your feelings in a whole new way, where you have more control of who you are because you're more in your center and your focus. You're not constantly worrying about if you're going to get caught as an imposter or a replica of the best part of you. you're going to actually be that best part of you. You're going to actually sit in it and own it. And it feels so good. You feel like literally physically more in your body. You feel literally more connected to yourself. You really start to see yourself as a full and complete person instead of, oh my God, worrying about whether or not someone's going to catch you not being you. Now, if you are really struggling with imposter syndrome and it seems to be permeating every part of your life, I want you to take a beat, okay? And I want you to think, are you repeating some kind of pattern? When you don't see yourself in a positive light, no matter how many people tell you how amazing you are, how many awards you win, or, the likes you get on a post or your retweets, or how many DMs you get, and you still seem to just shit all over yourself, you might be just repeating a pattern. And these patterns I'm talking about, they can start from like your childhood. They can begin from like a love, romance experience, and they can develop and repeat. And what I think modern psychology is trying to tell you is you've got to find that pattern and destroy it. And I would like to offer up as evidence, Your Honor, maybe these patterns and these repeats are not a bad thing. Do you remember learning how to read? And if it was challenging for you, do you remember where you use your finger to like run along the sentence over and over and over again, and you'd have to follow along pointing out the words with your finger? It's because two different things are happening at the same time. You're visually seeing the words and translating the meaning, and you're utilizing your finger as a physical pointer to help you focus. And that's exactly what learning a life lesson over and over and over again. Or like, have you ever had to listen to a song 500 times before you actually remember the lyrics or like actually hear the correct lyrics? Well, I think it's the same way with our life lessons and these patterns that we form. We have to repeat over and over that negative self-beating or that punishment in order to accomplish the feeling worthy. Like you're conditioned to crave that hurt to overcome it. If you're beat down and if you're not in your power, and being in your power is really scary, there is this huge responsibility and ownership involved in being authentically yourself and in being the non-imposter. But I am standing proof that the more you work on this, the more you start to see it and the better you are at taking care of yourself and learning how to get that positive self-perspective from within, how to generate it. If you see yourself as the powerful you, the one who knows their reactions and can spot them and change, then you're going to have a better connection, a fuller life. Time slows down. You start to really enjoy things. You start to enjoy yourself. And think of all the free mental space you're going to create when you're not anxious and worried about what other people are thinking and whether or not the curtains match the drapes. Now, before I move on, I want to touch on something real quick. It's kind of a sidebar. I want to make sure that we all agree. I'm not saying that social recognitions, the ones I was just talking about, like the DMs and the post likes and things like that, that is the only way to judge seeing yourself in a positive light or whether or not you're successful or worthy. I'm using those as surface examples. And I want to talk about the deeper levels of measuring our self-worth and seeing ourselves in a positive light. So again, this goes back to like, what are you using to measure or scale your self-worth? And I'm just going to reiterate. I know it's repetitive and I apologize, but I want to hammer this home because I'm so excited that I figured this out, and I think it might help you too. If self-care is hard for you and you're constantly feeling like, you got to the point where you Google searched or like somebody told you about a podcast about self-care and you're like, man, I really need to focus on that. Enough to where you listen this long. So I'm gonna hammer the point home again, and that is there's absolutely no external measure of success or self-worth. There's not a scale. You don't have to accomplish anything. You don't have to change. You don't have to meet any minimum requirement. You're just worthy. You're just worthy. And there aren't enough likes in the world that are going to make you feel worthy. That are going to make you feel like you're not an imposter, or you're not, to dissolve that dysmorphic sight. If you want to feel the feelings of worthy, you have to decide to feel it. This is a lot like weight loss and finances and things like that. We can talk all day about the philosophy of why you're where you're at, or how you've reached this point, whether it's finances, fitness, or your self-care or whatever. It doesn't matter. Put all that bullshit aside. Let's talk about legit action you can do right now to switch it. You already agree it's important. You're listening to the show. So let's talk about the actions we can do to switch that. And we're going to do this real quick right now. So let's practice together. Okay. I want you to start visualizing and imagining your most authentic, your most powerful, your best self, right? Now, think about your posture right now. No matter what you're doing, if you're at work, you're driving, you're cleaning the house, don't care what you're doing, just become aware of your posture. Is your current posture producing a feeling of worthy? Is it conveying a sense of competence, of power? Are you slumped over and feeling small, or are you up and feeling in charge? I bring this up because the way we physically carry ourselves can do so much to change our mental image. You can Google, there's this really great video, a TED Talk about the V stance, the power V stance. There's all different ways you can utilize your posture to get your headspace into a better sense of feeling better about yourself. The next practice I really want you to think about, and there's not much action required today. There's not a list of 5 ways you can do this. You know what 5 ways to do this. You know how to flip that script. I'm just challenging to actually do the things that you know work. You are the authority, right? You know you better than I do. And you know how you're going to get yourself to stop looking at yourself like an imposter and being insecure about what other people see and whether it matches, and how to get to the authentic self. Because once you start feeling like you're in that power, you get hungry for it. You want it. And you're going to know how to get back to it. And if you're returning back to it after a long hiatus of shitting all over yourself, just make sure you give yourself some credit and praise for getting back to it. The last little practice I want to offer up this week is I really want us to be conscientious about how we speak about ourselves. So what story are you telling about yourself? And is that story actually accurate? I went to the store, I bought some milk and some cheese and some butter. That's an accurate story. Oh, I'm so lazy. I went to the store, I got macaroni and cheese because I'm so lazy and I didn't want to cook. Do you see the difference? Both are true if you want them to be. So this week, as we're thinking about self-care, as we're going forward and we're making what's important to us the priority, let's really be aware about our posture, how we're carrying ourselves, and how we speak about ourselves this week. Because if you're not pumping yourself up, if you're not making you feel good about you, you're going to default to feeling bad about you. You're gonna default to what's wrong, what needs fixing, what do I have to overhaul, what do I have to change, what's the accomplishment list in order to be worthy of love, of food, of air, of life. And I want to reach out to you and let you know you're not alone. Some of the most incredible people around us have imposter syndrome and think that they are not good enough at the core of it. So let's change that up. Let's be the example for other people around us to know, hey, you can think you're a funny motherfucker. You can think you're good at something. You can revel in your accomplishments, in your successes, in the positive things about you without being a selfish prick. And that is what I have to say today. So that's it for this week. Thank you for joining me. If you have a story you'd like to share and you want to be on the show, you can email me. It's Chris, Kris, at selfcareissexy.com. Okay, we've got some really great interviews coming your way, so stay tuned. And remember that